Thank you. Okay. The third way that you can extend the textbook is through what I call creative extension. This is slightly different than what we looked at before. The first set of tasks that you did in extension were more based on the language of the textbook and how to have the students learn to take ownership of that language. In this segment, we're going to look a little bit at things you can do that ask the students to create, to draw, to make diagrams, to collaborate, compose new uses of the language, but again, based on the textbook. Visuals are an incredibly important way to bypass a lot of the adult anxiety, the adult worries about embarrassment when speaking a second language. Having a student draw a picture, fill in a chart, create their own diagram, and then talk about it is a great way to help them, again, gain control of the language, feel more in control, give them agency, but also allow them to create in English something which never existed before. And it's this sense of innovation and of control, going back to the idea that sociocultural theory looks at language as a way of regulating our activity in the world, which I think makes this kind of creative extension very valuable. Having them fill in a chart on the board, everybody collaborates to fill it in, or have everybody collaborate to write a short paragraph about something that you've just talked about, a summary on the board, all working together, is a great way to have the group work on language. The language is somewhat controlled, but it's also somewhat open. I also like to sometimes start with a Q&A. Just have the students initiate something, have them bring in a topic that they're interested in. You're the expert. Take a few minutes to speak from your expertise. It doesn't sound very connected to the textbook, but as the teacher, you can always reason your connection by being familiar with what's in the lesson for the day and bringing it around to that lesson. So here's an example of some textbook tasks which you could creatively extend. This is the kind of question that everybody likes to talk about, food. You could have them talk with each other. You could have them draw a picture of their favorite food and talk about it, picture of their procedure of their favorite recipe in very simplified form. These are sentences about food. You could have them fill them in, but not only with words, but also with pictures or diagrams. You'll see a little bit later that they could use mime and gesture so students could understand some of the preparation of the food. And asking students to bring in their own ideas. Food, of course, is a great topic for that, but drawing a picture, having them put their pictures on the wall, talking about their pictures, what we call a gallery walk can be a really exciting way to have them, again, initiate language and to focus on sort of interpreting what does the language mean in my life, for me? How does this textbook, which has been, specifically produced for everybody, become my English? Vocabulary exercises are often a great way to have them start making personal connections to words, drawing pictures, charting words with connections, like which two words would go together and why. It's not so much the right answer or the wrong answer, but how they justify their connections, using language to talk about languaging. As I mentioned before, mime and gesture, embodying your meaning, is a fantastic way to help students create these personal associations with the language of the textbook. You can help them understand that miming is a kind of iconic way of using language when you're trying to explain something. There's a famous challenge. Try to describe a spiral staircase without making the gesture for spiral. It's almost impossible. So sometimes we really do need gestures to help picture, to illustrate what we're talking about. But then there's another set of gestures and mimes which are less iconic and perhaps more about emphasis, or more about when we're telling a story. So then that was over there, but then today, now this is what happened in the second part of the story. And helping them learn to tie their gestures, tie their hand movements, their body movements, their eye gaze to what they're talking about. It's a great way to help them develop naturalness, but it's also a great way to engineer participation, because everybody in every language uses gesture. Everybody embodies language in certain ways. And it's a nice way to help them understand that although they might not feel very American or very Englishy when they speak English, giving them a chance to bring English into their body through gestures and mimes can be a great way to make it feel more natural for them. Pronunciation is a really good way to use mime and gesture, partly because you want to practice for English speaking stress in words and having gestures like clapping on the stress or raising your hand for the stressed syllable, but also just sometimes recalling stress. So if I hold up one, what are some words where the stress is on the first syllable? Multisyllabic words with stresses on the first syllable. They can recall it from the textbook. They can recall it from a previous lesson. They can just come up with new words for themselves. And sometimes talking about synonyms, these are what we call phrasal verbs, two-part verbs: pick up, get over, help out. That can be a great way to have gestures reinforce the idea that these particles, out, over, up, have different meanings with different verbs. To help out is different than to fill out. And you can have them do, again, going back to this idea that abstraction can help, have abstract gestures for each particle so that they learn the words not so much as meaningful combinations, but as fixed combinations. They don't have to remember the meaning of out, but fill out means enter information. Okay, your turn. Again, take a look at one or two of the exercises in the other PowerPoint that's linked in the chat and see what kinds of creative extensions you might come up with. Please bring in your own ideas. This is just a very small taste of what is available.
Okay, so it's our third and final breakout room 3. What creative extension task could you design to engineer participation? The first page is a beginner level page. Is he washing the car? Yes, he is. Is she walking the dog? No, she isn't. And then the next page, the final page, is for an advanced textbook. Just really quickly, I think the first page lends itself so well to mime and gesture. So I don't know if I would do this on the first day, but after everyone's a little more comfortable with each other, it would be really fun, I think, to have them, first of all, just fill out the page independently, or they could ask their neighbor for help. Is she walking the dog? No, she isn't. Is she talking on the phone? Yes, she is. So they get the basic grammatical structure. But then, to make it a lot more fun and interesting, maybe I would add to the list and use dictation. So I would add a few things and ask them to write it down. Is he feeding the baby? And ask them to write it down. Is she playing basketball? Okay, a few things that are easy to mime. And then finally, turn it into sort of a game of charades. And so ask for a volunteer. The student could stand up and ask the student to do one of the things on the list. And then the other students in the class have to raise their hand and say, is she walking the dog? And then somebody else has to say, yes, she is, or no, she isn't. And then you take turns. And that could just be a really fun way to take this language, these grammatical structures and new vocabulary off the page and into the little microcosm in your classroom of playing a game of charades. So I think that sounds like fun. Okay, and I'm eager to hear your ideas or see your ideas in your study guide responses. Be creative. And now I'll have Darren wrap up her video